Voters in Arizona passed something known as Proposition 100. And what it does is it would prevent undocumented immigrants from posting bail if they have done something violent and dangerous. Okay, so if they have committed a serious crime, they are not able to post bail. And one of the people who has felt the consequences of that is one woman by the name of Bishira Torres in Maricopa County.
Now, this is the county with Sheriff Joe, right?
Yes.
So these are the guys who do heinous stuff all the time. Now, look, you got to understand something. The intent, I'm sure, the voters was, hey, if there's a dangerous criminal, etc. But this applies to any felony, including forgery, which is what this woman was charged with, even though, as you're about to find out, it wasn't true at all.
Now, she went to go get a passport for her 13-year-old daughter, and in the process of doing so, she was told that she needed to go to a satellite location to get the passport, which she thought was a little strange. When she went there, authorities started questioning her about her ID, they started questioning her about her birth certificate, and they immediately assumed that she's an undocumented immigrant.
I mean, she is Latina.
She's Latina, right. Long story short.
And she has spent some time in Mexico. I mean, do we have to prove anything more than that?
They put her in jail for 4.5 months. And part of the reason why she couldn't post bail is because of this ridiculous law that was passed in Arizona.
Well, it's not part of the reason. It is the reason.
It is the reason. And also, she was born in the United States. She was born in the United States. They didn't care. The prosecutor in this situation didn't even check the long-form birth certificate, right? And the judge who heard this case was like, what are you guys doing? The birth certificate is right here. I just read it. And she asked the prosecutor if he had looked at it, and he admitted, no, I did not look at the birth certificate.
Now, Sheriff Joe is out there busy trying to find Obama's long-form birth certificate. How about you worry about the long-form birth certificate of a U.S. citizen you kept in jail for 4.5 months based on nothing? And the judge couldn't believe it. She's like, well, why didn't you? She asked the prosecutor, did you look for it? He's like, oh, yeah, I didn't look for a birth certificate. What the hell did you keep her in prison for 4.5 months for? But this is what happens when you have a thoughtless policy. When you say, I don't care if she's guilty or not guilty. I don't care if we've had the trial. Now, it's one thing to say, hey, you know what? Once you've had a trial and you've been convicted, you're going to get a tough sentence, right? But now our culture has shifted so that even if you're accused, good enough. Joe Lieberman, even in the U.S. Senate, proposed a bill that if anybody accused you of terrorism, you would immediately lose your citizenship. But not if you're convicted, just if you're accused.
Right.
This is the kind of culture that we've gotten. The NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, says that if the military accuses you of being an associated force of Al-Qaeda, they could detain you indefinitely without a trial. So are we surprised this is happening in Arizona? And so they said, well, look, at some point you were in Mexico and your father called you a different first name, which happens to only millions of people, about different first names, etc.
Right.
Good enough. I'm suspicious of you. You look like you're a foreigner. Let's put your ass in jail and not even bother to look up whether we're right or wrong. Can you imagine? The other part of that enrages me, honestly, is this thing that we've been going on the warpath about. Because it's true. It's that they don't give a damn about us, man. You think that if you're rich and powerful, you sit in jail for 4.5 months? You think a banker has ever seen 4.5 minutes in jail, let alone 4.5 months? And after all that fraud that they did? But if you don't have any power, yeah, nobody gives a damn. She couldn't make her car payments. She couldn't make her house payments. They ruined her life.
She has a 14-year-old daughter that she couldn't take care of for 4.5 months because she was thrown in jail for something that she didn't do, right? And also, I want to go back to something you said, Cenk, about Arizona voters and how they probably thought, oh, if they're violent criminals, then yeah, we should put them away without bail. No, this was a very specific this was a very specific proposition, right? Where they said undocumented immigrants do not get to post bail. And I 100% disagree with what you said. This was something that was targeted against undocumented immigrants. Arizona has a history of discriminating against Hispanics, and this is another piece of I can't say is it considered legislation if it's proposition? It's another proposition
Yes.
that's aimed at destroying families in Arizona if they're brown, and I'm tired of it, and I'm tired of making excuses for people in Arizona. I'm tired of making excuses for conservatives in the country, people who want to discriminate against people of color. That's what's happening in this state.
Look, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that. I'm adding something on top of that, which is that what drives me crazy is that, okay, you want to target undocumented people, right? Okay, and we might disagree with that, and we might think that there's a better way to address that issue, which is a real issue, etc., right? But if you judge people guilty before there's even a trial, you don't even know if they're undocumented.
Exactly.
She was perfectly documented. And you think that white people get locked up? If a guy named Robert Johnson gets locked up for being undocumented, look, even black people. You think black guy gets locked up in Arizona because they thought he was undocumented? No, they might lock him up for other reasons, but they're not going to lock him up for that reason. Obviously, this specifically allows corrupt law enforcement to go after Latinos in America. And the guy who said that the detective who locked her up in the first place, he lied on the stand and said, "Oh yeah, I have information that her birth certificate is a forgery."
The prosecution literally had one witness in this case, right? And that witness was one of the investigators, and he claimed that Vital Records, which holds the birth certificates in Arizona, claimed that they had canceled this woman's birth certificate because of forgery, that the document was completely fabricated, made up, and it was not real. However, Vital Records testified and said, no, that's not the case at all. He is lying. The birth certificate is real. It always has been. It always will be. I mean, it's unbelievable. How do you get away with lying on the stand like that? Lying to the grand jury about that?
I'm sure, though, that for that lie, which is, by the way, illegal to do that under sworn testimony, that he'll spend 4.5 months in jail, right?
Yeah, doubt it.
That's a good one.
Arizona is a scary, scary place, man, especially if you're Latino.